I always had the hunch, but then it's been verified cajillion times over, is that business, I think, is the number one place for not only professional growth, but also personal growth. It's better than academia. In fact, you can probably get less self-aware out of academia. Healthcare, all the professions, none of them give you the immediate feedback in that value creation results or not than being in business. So for me, my whole focus on teamwork and especially entrepreneurial teamwork has to do with how do people operate well in business. So that's what I pursued in terms of my education. I have a 3-year BA. It's not just normally they're 4 years now, but it was 3 years back then. It has the longest. Can I share it with you? The title? It's ridiculous. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Administrative and Commercial Studies with a specialization in social organization and human relations.
Yeah.
Yeah. What the hell does that mean? Essentially, it's like how do people work together? I have to tell you, and I was glad it was 3 years because my attention span was about that long. If it was, I need to go and find out whether or not any of the stuff I was learning actually worked in the real world. And of course, when you go to university, you're studying corporations, you're studying, it was human relations, it was industrial psych, it was organizational behavior, which I still love all of those things. But everyone you read about or study in case studies are all big companies. Um, but for me, where the real transformation happens so much more quickly is in entrepreneurial companies. There are so few what Dan Sullivan calls mediations between you and the world. You find out on the 15th and the 30th of every month whether or not someone thought that what you were doing actually created value, because that's whether or not they wrote you a check, right? Or paid you. So it is like, to my mind, it's the fast track. So you learn who you are in relation to creating value. You learn who you are in terms of working with other people to produce a result that's bigger than you. So yeah, so team dynamics, energy, I don't know. I love personal growth. Been in it since I was this big. But to my mind, the best place to learn and grow is a company, especially an entrepreneurial company.
Well, Shannon, let's talk a little bit about that, the personal growth aspect of this, because you bring this unique sense of awareness, and it's that you can go into a room, and I've seen it as you're talking with entrepreneurs, and as they just start talking about things that maybe someone else wouldn't necessarily pick up on, of like, and what do you want to call it? Energy, these like micro cues, these just things that like, okay, this sounds like maybe this when someone assumes it's going to be XYZ.
Right.
At what point did you realize in your life that you had maybe a unique awareness of maybe how groups were feeling, or like the energy was, or like just, I'm really curious because you said, you started personal growth at a really young age, which is most people, when they talked about personal growth, it was like, hey, I read this book in high school, or I got to college and this opened my eyes, or you know what, it wasn't until like you got in your 30s, right? So for you, what was that moment? Can you remember back? What was that moment where you went, whoa, I actually might have a little more awareness than others?
It's interesting. I'll do a quick summation of my younger years. So I grew up with, I would call them hippie parents, especially my mom. Okay. My dad was a lawyer, but he kind of dabbled, fan of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, used to studied yoga at some point, would embroider like seagulls on his jeans. It was crazy. Made his own yogurt. It's terrible. Anyway, so I grew up with kind of hippie parents. So they were always interested in, and I was born in 65. So, it was the 70s. Right? It was kind of that, discovering yourself. So I kind of grew up in that culture, and we would have community meetings at our house and stuff like that. So I was always a part of it. So I was always hanging out with adults. It did not make it easier to get along with kids. I can tell you that right now. However, when became an adult, I feel like I had a bit of a fast track. Like I had advanced knowledge of what that was like. But when I finally realized that I might have something useful to contribute was when one of my mom's, because she was a human resources specialist, actually. She started off as someone who helped run a day center for disturbed adolescents in downtown Toronto, and ended up working with corporations. You can make your own connections on that. Exactly. Uh, but one of her clients, I shouldn't say his name probably. So I was 23, 24, maybe 25. It was before I joined Strategic Coach. I joined when I was 26. He would come to me for coaching.
Whoa.
And I'm like, and this guy's at least 20 plus years older than I am, but he found it really useful to describe what was going on in his situation in his life. Back then, I didn't know how to charge for it. Still trying to figure that out. But it was like, I'm like, why is he talking to me? But so that was the first moment where I didn't realize I wasn't just taking stuff in and learning. I actually could be, I call it being a sounding board. I could be a really effective sounding board for someone. So that was kind of my first, oh, moment that there was something valuable that I could contribute to other people with, however I'm made up, whatever my mindset is and how I look at the world, that it could be useful to somebody else.
That's incredible. And then from there, just keep walking them down the memory lane here. So you have that conversation with someone 20 plus years your age and they're asking your advice.
Mm-hmm. So I used to work. So the company I was working for then, I did this for free. Oh, we give away what's most valuable. It's terrible. Anyway, I could have charged a lot more than nothing. And so I was working for a company then who was a small company, but the major client was General Motors of Canada. And I ran one of their programs. General Motors had a manager, but they didn't have a team. We were essentially their training team. And I had gone to school for training for, as I said, my ridiculously long degree title for 3 years. And so I had worked there. And what happened was, though, Strategic Coach was actually a client of the seminar room space. So we were the management consultants. One of the main clients was General Motors of Canada from a training delivery standpoint. We would run their national programs. And then we also had seminar room space. Well, at that point, 1990, 1991, Strategic Coach did not have their own seminar room space. They used to rent it. We were one of the places. So that's how I met Dana Babs way back in 1990, which is kind of crazy. So what happened was they would come and rent seminar room space. And I really wanted to grow. I really wanted to work with clients, but I was stuck doing admin. And if you know me, you know my Colby profile, you're like, oh dear, that may not end well. There's a reason why I had the highest billable hours in the company, because I was doing work that I was really slow at. Oh my gosh, billing was not my favorite thing. I also had no life at that point. So anyway, quick fast forward. So Dan and Babs were renting space. They called a friend of mine, Ross, with whom I worked, and said, hey, would you like to come and work for Coach and connect with our clients in between sessions? So he was going to an introductory presentation, and he told me about it. This is why I was really glad that I had friends that I talked to about this sort of thing. I said, oh, can you see if I can come too? So he calls up the salesperson. She says, sure. We go over one morning early, like 8:00, and went to the seminar room where Dan was hosting an introductory presentation about Strategic Coach. It was on Queen Street West. It was tiny. There was there's room for like 6 people around a boardroom table. I think we still have the table, and like room in the back for us sitting on chairs. So we had the meeting, and this is the day it was like a slide deck, like the round one.
It's bringing it back.
And totally. And so he had this whole conversation about how it's shifting from the industrial into the knowledge economy. It was fascinating. So then we go back to the office, and the salesperson phones up Ross and said, hey, do you know where I can get a hold of Shannon? He goes, she's right here. Now, Susan was a quick start in Colby, which is a good thing. And she asked me 2 really profound questions. She said, did you enjoy the presentation? I said, I loved it. This is stuff I've heard of in the news and the rest of it, but I hadn't put it together the way that Dan did. And then she asked me the crucial question, which was, are you happy with what you're doing? And out of my mouth pops, no, I'm bored. Weeks after that, I was on board with Strategic Coach. Yeah. Actually, Susan hired me. She asked me how much I needed to live on, and I calculated it, except I forgot taxes. So it was a very lean few first year. I used to borrow rent money from my sister, Julia. Anyway, fortunately survived that. And then I was on board with Coach. So that's kind of how it started. But I made the jump from large corporate into entrepreneurial, and I am so grateful that I did, because this is my tribe. These are my people.
Well, I think that just and lets the audience know that during all that time you've had a front row seat to actually being in an entrepreneur organization, helping build that team. Not only that, but then working with entrepreneurs and helping them understand what does it mean to be a teammate. I'm really curious, Shannon. I know one of the things that you have really been diving into, in addition to teamwork, is leadership, and I think it's so interesting that oftentimes people think leadership is leading from the front, but I think that there's this big connection of what does it mean to have relationship, teamwork, and leadership. I'd love if you could maybe kind of dive into those, and if we want, like, let's break each one of those down, and I think really help the audience understand that leadership isn't going, I lead, you do, which is very often the type of leadership that I see even with entrepreneurs, and also especially when you move into corporate organizations, is that I say, you do. And but I think there's a new form of leadership that's coming out. And I'd love for you to break down what is actually relationship, and how does that actually function in team, and what does it actually mean to function as a leader?
Interesting. And I want to add another context around this too. Leadership in this century is really much more around coaching, right? It's what I tell and you do, that's kind of management, right?
Hmm.
And it's a yes or no, it's black or white. Are you a square peg in my round hole? Or are you a round peg in the round hole? And if you're not, bye, you're out of there. So which is very transactional. When we talk about relationships, it means I care about you. I want to know that you're doing well. I want to help you grow. I want to help you succeed. And it's really interesting. If you look at the old assembly lines, right? It was really hard to get people to get onto the assembly line, to stay on the assembly line. They were coming off the fields and they were used to having their own schedule, so it was a big deal, but it was this like so partitioned off, no relationship or very little relationship at all is my perception of it. And we're out of that, more and more and more. If someone is coming into management leadership positions with that mindset, you are so out of date. It's ridiculous. And if you don't have relationship skills, please, gosh, go do something else, because you would not be welcome in my company, right? If you cannot care deeply about the people with whom you work, and it's a with, Dan and I are, our next quarterly book is called Growing Great Leadership. And one of the things he talks about is leadership in the networked economy versus the old hierarchical economy. And that was the top down that you were talking about. Well, in the networked economy, you better be good at relationships, right? You have to know and care and be invested in somebody else. And I know, like, strategic coach has, to a very high degree, unique ability teamwork. And I work with people I love every day. I got to hang out with Jodette on screen all day yesterday. I got to have 2 meetings with her today. I was working with Kathy this morning. I have known these people. Today is Jodette's 25th anniversary at Strategic Coach. I worked with Kathy for 23 years. I love them, right? And they know I'm for them at the essence. And it's interesting because we have kind of a reciprocal coaching relationship. They coach me and I coach them, right? Now, technically, my higher in the organization, maybe, but I'm frankly, if you take either one of those two people out, we're in trouble. So it's interesting. It's a very different dynamic, and some people take to it like duck to water. Other people are like, I want control, I want status, and I really think that that's an issue because I don't think there's as much room for that anymore.
Yeah, where does that come from? Where, I mean, that I need control, I want status. Like, where do you think that? Where's the genesis of that?
I think it comes from fear that people's identity, ego, we get into a whole philosophical conversation about that, needs that validation that other people say they're in charge, that they're capable, competent, they can rule over others, right? Their ideas are better than other people's. They need that external validation in order to treat themselves well, to be honest. However, I find that if you cannot be internally, I guess validating is the best word. If you don't have that internal locus of control, you are always looking for it outside. And depending on the people with whom you spend time or hang out with, it doesn't always end well. You need to have that internal locus of control.
I heard someone say that Dan puts out into the world what he's looking for himself. And I'm really curious when it comes to this idea of people wanting, control and status is out in the world, is that must they're trying to satisfy that internally for themselves.
It really does, to my mind, when I've run into people like that, which I try not to be clear, it comes from the sense of scarcity, and it's when you're used to abundance and there's a lot of talent and capability in it, and Dan has one of our core values is no defense budget, and you see people playing defense, it's so counter to what I'm used to. I sometimes actually don't know how to deal with it because I'm kind of spoiled, but it's so weird. It's so awkward. It really is. It's kind of binary. It's kind of one or the other. I don't know how to have both successfully in an organization.
Let's dive into what does it mean to be in relationship, right? Because that's you talked about leadership coaching. Let's talk about relationship. What does that mean to be in relationship? And how have you seen that play out in the teams and teamwork?
Relationship is kind of what I was saying. It's when I'm invested in you, I care about you, and I want you to be successful. Right? Like that's a
Yeah.
good relationship is we are in relation to one another. The other aspect of relationship for me is I know and appreciate who I am, and therefore I can know and appreciate who you are. I don't assume that we are the same, right? I'm interested in you as an individual, somebody who's unique and special. And so, and then we get to find out where we click, where we don't, where we're different. Maybe we need another who, as we like to say, who, not how. It's in relation to. That's really what relationship means. It means you have to have you have a reference point that's the other person. And what that means for teamwork is you're super curious about with whom you're working. You're interested in who they are and what they can bring to the table. Uh, and it's interesting. You can still have standards about with whom you want to work. There are some people with whom I do not want to be in relationship and with whom I do not want to be in teamwork. That's another story. That's why I wrote my second book, Multiplication by Subtraction.
Was that your therapy book?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
It was. It's interesting. I always say that I'm often creative out of frustration, like out of being mad. And then I was talking to Dan, I guess it was last week, and actually it's when you see a danger. I was like, oh, that's an even better explanation. I kept seeing a danger where entrepreneurs we were working with, often senior leadership, and and my client, the owner, could not see that the person that they were giving so much power to in the situation was there for their own reasons, not my clients. They want to build up their own little power structure in the business where it was not in relationship to go back, right? They could care less. It was a transaction for them. They wanted to build up their own little hierarchy. They were very skilled, knew what to say, all the things. And I could spot it. And this one friend of mine, John, I was talking to him and his key team leader who he's like, oh, he's going to, succeed me in the business and he's going to own it and all the things. And this guy was totally paying lip service to everything we were talking about. He was so fake. And I told John this later that night. He goes, oh, no, no. 2 years later, he goes, Shannon, you were right. I was like, I know. Listen to me soon. So that was the first impetus for writing that book, because I hated seeing my friends, my clients taken advantage of by people so who did not have relationship as a value, as a criteria.
Do you think that curiosity is innate, or do you think it's a learned behavior, taught behavior? I mean, where does curiosity come from? Like when you've had a front row seat to some of like the best leaders, the best entrepreneurs, and I'm curious, what's the commonality that you see? Where does that curiosity come from?
Okay, that's a deep question. We could spend a while on that one. Curiosity for me is a sign of two things. One is it's a mindset. You're interested. It's not all about you, right? But it also means that people have to have space and capacity. When I see people lose their curiosity, it's when they're exhausted, when they're overwhelmed, when they're tired, when they've been doing something and they're bored for too long. So curiosity can get covered up, is what I say. I think curiosity is a natural state of humans. Look at a little kid. They're really bloody curious. Like, oh, if I stick my finger in this electrical socket, what happens? You're like, no, don't be curious about that. So most curiosity is a natural human characteristic. I think it can get covered up. I think it can get covered over or drowned a little bit. Uh, and then it's a matter of getting people back to who their best selves are, and then they go back to being curious. It's also a sign of intelligence to me. I mean, I just late last night arrived home from Abundance 360, which is a phenomenal exponential technology conference organized by Peter Diamandis. And I have to tell you, I was listening to some incredibly smart people who are intensely curious about everything. Everything from materials science to AI to programming to digital currencies to how the world could work better. It's a bit mind blowing to be. I'm like, oh, I'm curious, but I don't think I'm not curious. Um, so I see intelligence sometimes going along with that too. So yeah, those are some of my off the top of my head thoughts on curiosity.
What's the type of framework would someone need to have, right? So if there's an entrepreneur, and oftentimes I think when we are hiring our teams, because I think that at a lot of other jobs, the curiosity is not encouraged. In fact, it's actually discouraged. I'm curious from your like seat, what's the framework to bring that into the culture, into the DNA?
Mm. The framework it's an openness. Like if you are not open to new ideas, people will not bring them to you, and they will not be curious about what new ideas they could bring into the company because you shut them down. Right. So I think it's incredibly important to recognize that every company has their own, hopefully, if they're conscious, their own unique contribution to make to the world. And then be super curious about who else is out there. Is there a way to do it faster, easier, cheaper with bigger impact? You know, to want to know. Otherwise, you stay static and you stay stuck. And someone will overtake you even if it is your unique ability, it's someone else will find a way to do it faster, easier, cheaper with a bigger impact. So I think staying curious is a very important survival mechanism for entrepreneurial companies. But the framework has to be one where you're open to new ideas. If you're not open, you will shut down any new things that come in from your team.
That's really interesting. Curiosity strikes me as if you go out to eat and you have this incredible dish and, the obvious flavors, right? When you're tasting it, you go, oh, okay. Oh yeah. I taste a little garlic. Okay. Some like pepper, definitely maybe a little acidity in there. I'm curious. Curiosity strikes me as one of these flavors that it's in the recipe, but it's a non-obvious ingredient, yet it adds like so much umami into there. I'm curious, what are the other like ingredients that are non-obvious to most entrepreneurs and people that make up like an incredible dish that you would go, okay, there's teamwork and people hear about it and they give lip service to it, but the one where you go, man, if you have this, it's such a non-obvious skill, culture, core value that that people might be surprised from like your 25 plus years of experience.
I hope it's not surprising, but it might be because I don't think people think it's possible in companies. My first two answers that popped to my mind when you were talking is love and trust.
Break those down.
uh, so love, like I said, I love Kathy. I love Jodette. And I care about them as people, and we have a strong relationship. And they know that. They know I've got their back. They know I'm for them. But also trust. And there's a lot. I was raised in what was called a trust community, which is not a cult. Let's be clear. Uh, they didn't take all our money, but I was raised about like it was part of what someone brought to a level of consciousness that most people didn't have, and actually, it was you, my friend, who gave the definition of confidence. Can you share that again? Because that blew my mind. And then I'll continue about trust. But can you share confidence? Because I was like, bam.
Well, in the line of talking about curiosity, I was preparing to coach a workshop of 40 entrepreneurs out in LA. And one of the slides that just said the word confidence on there. And I started thinking about what an interesting word, right? We all want it. We all feel like maybe we don't have it. But no one can really actually say what exactly is confidence. It's one of those words be like confidence. You're like, oh, you get it. But when you go, well, no, tell me what that is. I looked at the etymology. It's a pastime sort of fun habit that I picked up from my sister, who was an English major in college and had a love of words and honors English, by the way. So as my sister is probably listening to this, she'll appreciate that shout out. But the etymology of the word confidence comes from the Latin con, which means with, which you see that in a lot of different languages inspired by Latin. But the thing that surprised me most was that the second half of that came fidere, Fidere, and it means to trust. And it completely changed my viewpoint of what does it mean to have confidence. It means with trust. And that just blew my mind.
And mine. You shared that at the coaches conference. And it's like so being raised with trust is part of the way my family functioned. I was like, wow, that is incredible. And so but it has to start with yourself. You have to be able to trust yourself. And my mom raised me to trust myself. So I do, even when I'm doing something she doesn't like, she still has to put up with it. But it's trusting yourself, and then it's building that trust with other people. There's a book, I think it's one of the Covey books, called The Speed of Trust. It's like how much faster you can operate. Like I know if I have a 10-minute conversation with Kathy, the design of could be a speech, could be a whole day, is epic because of the trust I have. I know how she works. She knows how I work, et cetera, et cetera. Are we always working to make it better? Yes. I had some improvements that I could make today. But so when you care about people, when you're in a relationship, is what you were talking about earlier, you build up that trust, and we say we trust other people, but really we're like, do we? Do we really? I trust that they're out for themselves. I trust that they want a promotion. I'm trusting that if they could, they take my job. We trust in those things, but do we really trust in the relationship, in the teamwork? And that's why at coach and intentions, that's a big one. So when someone's not willing to be open, when someone's not willing to share what they're curious about, I'm like, oh, this might be a good time to talk about my personal rule. People have their rules in life. I think I've only been able to figure out one, which doesn't strike me as a very high number. But my personal rule is I trust people to the degree that I think they know themselves. I trust people to the degree, or have confidence in people, would be another way to put it, to the degree that I think they know themselves. Someone who does not know themselves very well, they don't know what they're going to do. So how the heck would I?
Yeah. How does that manifest for you in terms of how do you actually sniff that out? I'm really curious. I'm sure our audience goes, okay, what's your filter like that you go, a lot of trust, not so much trust.
I ask questions to see if people reflect on their experience and whether or not they seem to have learned anything from it. So that would be number one. Are they curious is another, rather than judgmental. Oh my gosh, the phenomenal dart scene from Ted Lasso. Be curious, not judgmental. Every time I see it on Facebook, I'm like, yes. Uh, I love that one so much. I will sometimes yell that at my husband, but that's another story. But it's the how else and also is someone willing to learn about themselves? So I'm a huge fan of profiles. I have curated the main ones down to 4 in case anyone's curious, because I've done dozens and dozens of them. But if they're not willing to do a profile, if they're not willing to put language to their uniqueness, if they are not curious about how they operate or how other people operate, I'm like, yeah, no, probably not going to hang out with you, probably don't want to be in teamwork with you. It's not a level of relationship that I find fulfilling, and I don't have a way to talk. I don't have a way to describe myself to you that makes sense. I don't have a way to understand you because we don't have a common language. So I choose not to be in teamwork with people who are not to some degree self-aware. Know thyself is my number one rule for people that I will spend time with, personal or professional.
I love that. You were talking about that your mom gave you systems of trust. If you were kind of reflect back on, what was the one memory where you went, she really imparted upon you this impact of trusting yourself? Do you have a memory that you go, you know what, mom, thank you?
Yeah, she made There's one example. Well, she worked with me on it. So this was also, it wasn't that it was just blindly given, like go play on the street. Like it wasn't that. Let's be clear.
I mean, well, you did say you're a hippie parent, so you never know.
But traffic is still a thing. But there was one time where so she used to work as a social worker for disturbed adolescents. One of her patients, one of her whatever charges, wanted to go out to dinner with me. He was older than I was, and he had some major psychiatric issues. And it was kind of weird. So, and it wasn't really a dating thing, but still, it was definitely crossing, professional into personal and that sort of thing. She goes, well, and I was kind of like, I didn't quite know what to do, but whatever. So we kind of worked it out. She goes, okay, I would like to be able to trust this situation. And we kind of worked out what the checks and balances would be and what would happen in different scenarios. And I went out and it was fine. I was safe. There's nothing bad that happened. And it was good for him too. Had a higher sense of trust, I think, in himself. But we kind of worked it out. So we had those conversations were more conscious, I think, than in most families. Most would be like, yes, you can do that. No, you can't. Like just the rules. And the way Marilyn works is to kind of work it out with me.
That's what's crazy. That was your first form of the new age of leadership.
Yes, you're right.
I mean, you had a front row seat. I'd love to say 10 years ago, but we know it might have been a little bit more. But that's so wild to me that you actually had a front row seat to a leadership that was not yet in vogue.
It's true. And I can thank Mom for that. I mean, she was someone, and I think I also lead that way. I mean, it's just how I was raised. It's my mindset. It's my value system too. I want people to show up as their best unique ability self, and I trust them to do that. I absolutely do. And I want to eliminate any obstacles to that and, supercharge the ways for it to make it work. Because I know people can do incredible things that I can't do. I was coaching some managers yesterday on screen, and they're so organized and so detailed. And one of them is managing 21, soon to be 22 people. And I was like, I'm in awe. I could not do what she does. I was like, I don't have the, I just don't have the capacity for that kind of stuff. And I was just like, wow, and I don't think, and I'm a senior, whatever, I'm expert in teams and all the things, but still I'm in awe of this person who's younger than I am, but can manage a level of complexity in a business that I would not want to take on. Now, but I would trust her to do that. And I trust me to do what I do best. Does that make sense?
It does make
Yeah.
sense.
So there's not, what I really like about this is there isn't the kind of hierarchy. It means that I can appreciate someone who answers the phone really well, who manages our building, who keeps my computer functioning. And I can be very confident in the areas where I know I'm strong, and very humble about everything else. And that just leads to great teamwork, great relationships, and great results, which is kind of the point.
What's interesting, you use the word trust when you think about some of the new technology that's coming out, right? Blockchain technology is based off of cryptology, right? Which is all about trust. And it almost seems to me that the new form of teamwork is all based off of this level of creating these blockchains between relationships and minds and unique abilities.
Nice. Like that combination.
Before we kind of keep moving forward, can you double click on love, right? Because that's the other sort of ingredient that you said is probably not obvious. And quite honestly, in a business setting, talking about love is you want to get some people to go, whoa, this culture is a little bit different. I mean, why is that? Why do you think that that's taboo? That maybe not so much now, but has been historically in business as culture, and why do you think it's this glue or this accelerant in teamwork and then therefore winning?
Okay, I'm going to write down that word accelerant. I love that. A, I like it for lighting fires, and B, I really like it for teamwork. Okay, what a great question. So here's why I think it's important. And I will circle this back to, I got to have Kathy Kolbe on my podcast. Kathy Kolbe is an expert in what's called conation, which is people's striving instincts. She created the Kolbe profile, Kolbe, if anyone hasn't done theirs yet. and she's an expert. So, but they also at Colby talk about the three parts of the mind. There's the cognitive, mental horsepower, brains, IQ, all the things. Very important. I used to think everyone was kind of the same, and then I realized a few years ago that wasn't actually true. So IQ doesn't hurt. And then we've got, how we feel about something, our preferences. It's called our affect, and it's also where our motivation is. And then we have, I always put my hand on my gut. This is like how we take action. Will. This is our will. Are we willing, or won't? And it really comes from this area. So I think a lot of business up until now has been run from your head. You know, someone only wants to hire Ivy League people. You have to have gone to this school, got this GPA, all the things. That's how people were staffing their companies. Things have shifted. Now, again, I'm a huge fan of brain power. Don't get me wrong. I like being surrounded by smart people. That's one of my success criteria. However, as Kathy said, everything starts with motivation. You are not motivated to learn something if you don't care about it. You are not motivated to take action if you don't care about it. It all starts with motivation. Motivation comes from your heart. That's where love comes from, right? So if you imagine working with someone who is technically really skilled at something, and you have someone else who's also technically skilled, but they love it, they have a passion for it, who would you bet on? I'm betting on this person. I'm betting on the person who not only is technically skilled, but leans in, is hungry, wants to know more, is super curious, to go back to that point. I mean, there's a passion there, right? That person's going to go farther, than anyone else will go, if even though someone else is technically really, really good. So when you combine intelligence and how people strive with someone who really loves what they do and loves with whom they do it, you have an unbeatable formula. So I call this kind of bringing your whole self to work. When someone combines what they're most interested in with their intelligence, so they've gone and pursued that and learned lots about it, so they care about it, they're knowledgeable about it, and the way that they're working is in alignment with how they naturally take action, you have a healthy, happy, contributing human being.
It's crazy as I'm listening to you. I'm also hearing that, keeping in this food analogy space, is that the aftertaste or the aroma that happens when you have all of those is gratitude.
Ooh, yes.
Right? I mean, and that's an incredible elixir, because you know what is an antidote to fear and uncertainty? Gratitude, which is a subsidiary or offshoot or molecular part of love, which is, I think, is really interesting.
I like that. The other thing that comes along with it, to that point, is a sense of abundance versus scarcity. You're getting to do what you love to do, what you do best, what you find most interesting. I'm sorry, that sounds like pretty much perfection to me, right? Like, I love playing in the sandbox of entrepreneurial leadership and entrepreneurial teamwork. That is my playground, right? And I get to do it with really smart people, and I get to do it with really committed, engaged people. I'm a maximizer. I do. If someone's like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to come to work today," I'm like, "Yeah, no." You're not the person I'm coaching, right? If someone's like, "Oh my gosh, I am so excited to come to work today, but I'm not sure how to handle this obstacle," I'm like, "Okay, good. Let's dive in." Right? Like, I'm really clear who my audience is. And it's a joy, and there's a sense of abundance. There's lots of opportunity. There's lots of chances to make an impact. There's lots of people to have great conversations with. There's lots of offshoots of knowledge and intellectual property that comes out of it. There's just a lot, as opposed to if I'm doing something where I don't like it, I'm not interested in it, and I don't know much about it, I'm in a state of scarcity, and there's no love. there's no gratitude. There's only like just forbearance and muscling through, and the hard, doing it the hard way. It's not fun.
I'm wondering if another key element of leadership is not just also coaching, but creating areas of playgrounds for people. And because I was listening to you, and I'm going, what it sounded like to me was just an adulting version of when someone goes talking about, "I'm going out to play."
Yes. Oh, I love that.
I'm curious, and the other word you said that I thought was really interesting is you said the word clarity. And, and you think about if I ask my almost soon to be 4-year-old, what do you want to go do to go have fun? It takes about a solid 0.001 seconds, and she is really clear about what it is to have fun. But if we ask someone in our team or like someone in terms of that, they're like, what job do you do? Right? They're like, list a job. And then they list a title that's like 20 syllables long. Right. But when but are they clear about what it is that they do for play in that role? Why is that so hard for us adults, even though we have this inner child, for us to have clarity?
Oh, I think we get it trained out of us. And this is a lot of my work with Colby because I this year will be 30 years since I've been certified in Colby, which is a long time. Um, Not coincidentally the same year I started coaching. Clear? Those 2 things are integral to one another. But I learned about it because it's how do I say this? She's learned that people's affect, their how they think they should show up from a personality standpoint can override someone's driving instincts, and most importantly, their learning, their education can override someone's instincts. So I'm often actively working to get people to come from that instinctual place. It's why at Coach, we don't give you 2 hours to fill out an exercise. We'll probably give you 90 seconds. We don't want you to think, oh, what's the right answer? No, what's your answer from your gut? Right. So I think we can put again too much weight on the outside, that external locus of control for how we think we should show up or what we think we should know or how we should do it. And it's like, yeah, no, let's get you back to who you really are. And those will be the most authentic, the most real, the most genuine, and most useful answers.
Yeah, what are top 3, 5 things that you would tell entrepreneurs or leaders who are listening to this to get people back to a place of like if their team, right, to either create or get back to a place of curiosity, get back to a place of trust or with confidence with themselves, or from a place of love and curating these playgrounds? Like, what would you say top 3 things that they could immediately go do or spend time thinking about their thinking on? What would those be?
My first, and I actually just coached this yesterday, so it's very top of mind. The first thing that I do, because people have to get out of their fear state, right? Most people are like, am I doing a good enough job? Am I going to be fired? Even though they've been there forever. I mean, the conversations people have in their head, I don't know how they sleep because they're not fun. So you have to anchor, in my experience, you have to anchor people in the gain, and you have to anchor. And one of the best ways to do that is to talk about their strengths and just really, so get them anchored in their progress. Because I did that yesterday with moving future exercise, which you're familiar with a coach. And then I went and did Clifton strengths with them. Now they'd already completed the profiles and they had them, but I really had them lean into their strengths because they don't change. And you have a raw talent times investment equals a strength, and a strength is where you get near perfect performance. Well, who the heck doesn't want that? I do, right? And so I was coaching them on it, and you could just see that their shoulders start to go down and they started to like perk up a little bit. It was really interesting. And one person said, I now know myself better. That was her win. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And and now they also have a way of talking about it. So one of the best, so invest in your team and invest in something like a profile, which is very, I mean, it's subjective, but it's objective because you have the common language. There are 34 different strengths in Clifton Strengths. And so something like that, Working Genius is another favorite. Colby and Print are my two. Those are my four. So really help anchor that. So I would say do a positive focus and get people anchored in the gain.
Yeah, can you for people who don't know can you explain what that is?
So this is our concept called the gap in the gain. And it's brilliant. I'll actually say where it came from. So Dan was talking to one of our clients who he knew from a previous conversation had the best quarter he'd ever had, closed the biggest client, that he'd ever had, the biggest contract, all the things. And he came in and Dan's like, oh, how are you doing? He goes, oh, terrible. This happened, that happened. Things. And I was there. And Dan went, that time it was a flip chart. Now it'd be a smart board. And he went and he drew a head. And he goes, here's the problem. He said, you have an ideal. Here's where you are now. He drew a line right parallel to the kind of ear level. He said, you have an ideal of how things should be. And any progress you make towards it kind of gets wiped off like a bug on a windshield. It's gone. Instead, if you turned around and look where you came from and recognized your progress, towards, you would feel completely differently. Where you are is the same. But are you looking ahead to where you're not yet? Or are you turning around and seeing where you came from? If you're measuring against the ideal, it's like the horizon. You get closer to it and it moves away, right? Even if you run real fast or if it's dark outside, doesn't help. But when you actually stop, and that's the gap, and that's the ideal. There's a permanent gap between where you are now and the ideal. We have ideals for everything. We have ideals for our days, our weeks, our conversations, our weight, our health, our spouse, our children, our office, you name it, we've got ideals. Now, ideals are awesome. They inspire us. They help us set goals. They help us stick through tough situations, but they're bad when we measure ourselves against it because we're always going to fall short. And people are always falling short, have that sense of scarcity. They're disappointed, they're frustrated, they're mad. And they don't just experience that internally, they also take it out on other people. So it's not where you really want to hang out. Now, if you're measuring your progress from where you started, you're like, whoa, I did more than I thought I did there. And then if you're measuring your progress, you have a sense of accomplishment and optimism, instead of pessimism, capability. And then people are always thinking, well, if I'm not beating myself up for doing more, then I'm going to stop. And you have to ask yourself, really? If you're feeling confident and capable and like you just nailed it, do you really want to stop? No, you probably want to keep going. But if you're feeling like a failure because you're measuring yourself against the ideal, how motivated are you? Not really. You just want to go have a nap, pull the covers over your head. So that's a dramatic version of the gap and the gain. But that's exactly what I did yesterday with this team of people who might be kind of experiencing something close to burnout. Was I had them really measure their progress. And so I did, what was their morale about? What had high momentum? What were they motivated about? What were their multiplier projects? That was the first hour. And the second hour, we did a very fast version of Clifton Strengths. And then I had them put that into a special exercise. And then they went in pairs and described to each other, here's my best self. When I'm being my best self, here's the support that I need so I can stay, in the highest level of my strengths. Or here's what the compensation I need because it's not factory installed, right? So I have people be really honest about who they uniquely are rather than trying to fit into some predetermined mold, which, by the way, they're usually wrong. You probably don't have a mold, but they're trying to fit into something that they think you want, but you've never actually said. So it gets very messy very fast. So those are my first two steps. Get people to measure their progress and get people to be really cognizant, knowledgeable, and articulate about their strengths.
What I love about everything that you're saying, it seems so obvious, but I will tell you that when I get a look-see into most organizations, these are the things when they start having conflict or things are not scaling as nearly as fast. They are missing some of these key underlying clarifiers that actually provide with trust for you people on your team. And it's based off of this. I mean, I've worked with Shannon now for going on 10 years. And I have to tell you that every time we've put this into one of our organizations, we see exponential growth. And it's not something like it's not a brand new sales idea. It's not something that that is like a silver bullet, but it's something that it starts to create that curiosity, trust, and love that Shannon was talking about, these non-obvious umami ingredients. And so I want to just give you some kudos, Shannon, but also for our audience to realize that you might be like, sure, focus on strengths, right? Sure, like do all these different things. But I will tell you, most entrepreneurs, most leaders give those lip service.
And it's really important that it's you as the leader owner. This has to be a core value or it doesn't work, because you will find people in your company who pay lip service. They're only interested in their own strengths. Thank you very much. And they want to use it as a way to squish other people, hold them down, keep the status quo. They want to use it for their own purposes. So you have to be really rigorous about making sure that value system goes through. And I want to turn the tables on you, my friend, because we got to work together. You invested heavily. Oh my gosh. I cannot believe after I went to visit you, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you brought your whole team to Toronto. I don't know how many times. But you did that. So you were like, the whole thing was creating a self-managing company. And we went through a lot of these exercises and a few dozen more. And then you took that leadership role yourself and you have continued it. And so I was telling you this before we hit record that I'm doing a new scorecard for entrepreneurial leadership. And the way that we do it at Coach is it's not theoretical, which it easily could be. It's not just mental, it's from real, genuine experience. So I wrote down 3 leaders that I admire, respect, look up to, and you were number 1 on my list. And then I also wrote down those are the 3 best examples. And then the 3 worst are all the people with whom I really dislike working or terrible examples of leadership. And that gives you the success criteria for the best, how to avoid the worst. So, Ben, you are someone who does this to the nth degree. You are more conscious, intentional, dedicated to embodying this and putting it into play with people. You don't just do it once, like in out, nobody gets hurt. You have this be a constant part of the conversation. And I got to work with your team doing Working Genius most recently. So you will invite other people in when you want to, when it's something new. But can you talk to, because I think your mindset of how you approach your team and why this is so important, the result is spectacular, clearly, because how many companies do you have now?
5, 6.
Yeah, I've lost track. And it was only one we were first working together. But this is something that you do. I mean, what you're asking me about is something that you have intimate knowledge on and do it on a day-to-day basis, maybe even more than I do.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. Even listening to you now, I'm really curious about and had been curious about, well, what are those like actual ingredients? Because when you name it, you can go, oh, well, that's what it is. I think the thing that I have noticed, and one of the reasons why I invested so heavily, and I didn't actually have the language for this until I heard this quote probably 8 years later. It actually came from a mutual friend of ours, Reagan, and he and I were talking, and we're talking about teams and just what does it mean to have a tribe and the different forms of tribal leadership, right? And he said, and I can't remember, and again, I don't know who to give this quotes credit to, but it was this idea that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And when I started seeing that the opportunity that we have the ability to come to the marketplace, and how I view the marketplace are people who are just waiting to be loved on. When I started Strategic Coach, I realized that Coach was going to give me this roadmap to my joy. And then I started looking at going, well, if I can find my roadmap to my joy, what would happen if I started giving roadmaps to the people on my team to their joy? And I've always led in the way that I don't ask someone to do something that I haven't asked of myself first. And what was crazy about it was that I went into this going, hey, how do I get this DNA deep? Hey, how do I get this thinking about the thinking and getting people away from the idea that they were being hired to do a job versus that there was a job description that I actually wanted to apply their thinking to.
Nice.
And what came out of it was way more than I expected. It was the investment in, I got at least 100x return on it because people felt seen, heard, and understood. They saw me actually not just give lip service, I actually put money. I mean, because people aren't idiots to fly all those people up to Toronto, the culture stuff, to house them, to feed them, and then knowing that when they come into this organization where they're having rich conversations that most people who have worked at other places realize we're not having these conversations. Just shut up, do your job, right? And all of a sudden you're being asked, well, how would you improve this? What would you have the vision be for this process or this specific thing?
Which is trust. You don't ask those questions unless you trust that person and their insight and their brain and their heart. You don't ask those questions. You assume that you know best. right? So it's making that investment. I mean, when you invest in people, so a lot of people treat team members as costs and they treat training as a cost. Well, any smart business person tries to what with costs? Reduce them. But if you look at your team members and their coaching, their training as an investment, what does any smart person do for that matter? You try and maximize your investment. Thank you very much. Now, occasionally you are investing in the wrong person or you don't get much of a return. That does happen, but you learn really quickly. Kiss a few frogs and you'll figure it out. And it's and so I think and people see you making that investment. And sometimes if they know they're not the right person, they will opt out. It's kind of weird. It's very cool. So you don't have to do the heavy lifting on that. And you making that investment in the team and both with me and then later on your own, what the message that sends to people, Ben, is incredible.
Yeah, I will say that the outside of my engagement with Strategic Coach, my relationship with Jenna, in my collaboration with Beth, in the number one truly accelerant asymmetrical return that I've ever had across anything has been investing into my team, hands down. And again, this is my shameless plug for you, Shannon. That if people are looking to go, I like this, but they're going, this sounds great. This feels complex. This sounds complicated. Shannon, how can people find you? Just in a kind of a mid-conversation plug here, because I think people by now, if they aren't compelled to go, if you want a 10x leap, I can tell you the easiest and fastest way is to do through your team. So, how can they find you if they go, I want what Ben had?
Right. Now I feel like I need to write another book just to answer that question. So go to yourteamsuccess.com. That has my 2 books, which is the Team Success Handbook, which are 12 strategies for entrepreneurial team success. Then also multiplication by subtraction. And can I just share a couple things that I think are really fun? So Team Success Handbook is based off an exercise that I created after trying to coach team members. And some of them, it was sinking in about this much, right? And it was like, what is wrong? So we analyzed, myself and my team, we analyzed who's successful in coach and who's successful in our clients' companies. And we came up with 12 entrepreneurial attitudes. So that exercise is available in the book. And also on the back. Things like create value, be a partner, take action. Number 10 is my favorite. Learn how to handle strong emotions because they are a natural, normal part of entrepreneurial life. Just saying. So there's those. And then the book I was talking about earlier is multiplication by subtraction. And on page, I had so much fun writing this. This is how my brain works. I wrote down its symptoms on this side and resulting cost over here. So if you have someone who's the drama queen or king, that's going to be a problem. If you've got someone who's focused on status, someone who's arrogant, aka God's gift to your company, it's kind of a clue. So there's a little chart here on page 34, 35, which if you check off more than 3 or 4 for one person, massive, well, that's a red flag. And if you check off all of them, flip to the back of the book to learn what to do next. But the book is actually about trying to find that right fit in terms of the 3 parts of the mind. It's actually, this title is How to Gracefully Let Go of Wrong Fit Team Members and move them around until you really figure out they're not a right fit, which will often be values, and then how to do it. It's not a hatchet book at all. And the thing that my colleague Christine, she goes, it'd be really great to have a mindset scorecard. So at the back is a right fit team member mindset scorecard. So there's lots of cool resources, but all of them are available with some downloads and exercises from yourteamsuccess.com.
Yeah, and we'll include the link in the show notes and in the description.
And my recommended reading list, which is extensive, but it's where I've gleaned so much information and knowledge and wisdom. I'm an avid reader and love tapping into other people's brilliance, so I share all of that.
That's incredible. That's incredible. The last thing I wanted to share with you, as after we resume our programming after that mid-session, I think important announcement, public service announcement for entrepreneurs. I think the other thing that it's taught me by diving in on the team and being so invested in their personal growth, because what I found is that their personal growth usually leads to exponential, and the key word I wanna say asymmetric. So when I say asymmetric, when it means that the fact is that the downside is like exponentially disproportionately smaller than the upside. And I think that most entrepreneurs, they want to invest in the new technology, they want to invest in like the next thing. But I have to tell you, uh, the team is the direction. But the thing that I also realized with the team, for me to like be able to win, and what this focus and deep dive into team, it taught me that I needed to uh, change how my tuning fork was for applause.
Oh, that's intriguing. Okay, tell me more about that.
I used to think that winning was when people would go, "Ben, wow, you're amazing. I could not do this without you." And what I realized was that was such a small node versus a larger body of work, that when team was winning, it was actually an indicator of me living and executing exponential mindsets, which then turned into exponential growth. And I think that was like I remember it, and I will tell you, there was death of ego that happened that day. I mean, a major death of ego. And but I have to tell you, so freeing, and it it's so fun. It's so fun to see your team winning. And what it's crazy is I can actually trace back to these moments when I look at balance sheet, cash flow, to when we actually had these sort of investments and inputs. And I guess if you want to say guesses and bets, which is what we do as entrepreneurs, right? We take guesses and bets. And I will tell you that forevermore, that has been exponential, not only in my professional life, but also in my personal life.
But that shift that you're talking about is so key. That's the shift from manager to leader. That is the shift from whatever to coach. Like, so what you just talked about, and when it's no longer about you. That I was just interviewing, I was telling you one of our newest coaches, Eric, and he's like, it's like when someone else's winning makes you happy, right? When it's not about, oh, you're a good coach, but like, oh my God, I'm so happy for you, right? Just for whatever reason, they took the few words that you gave them and they turned it into something exponential with their own capabilities and their own ideas. And you see that and you're so excited for them, not because it's about you, because of their winning. That is what to aim for. And I think you can't do that until you're good at what you do.
Say more.
We talk about the shift from being a rugged individual to unique ability teamwork. Um, so there is an element. It would have been hard for me to do this if I didn't have any capability or expertise with profiles. If I hadn't had some coaching experience. Now, I've always been someone who I've never been someone who saw someone else's. I don't think life is a zero sum game. I don't think I ever thought that. So I don't think if someone else is winning, I'm losing. That kind of isn't my framework for the world. But you have to be decent. Like, you have to have some capability, or right, you have to put in some of the reps to be good at what you do, and then you can start to focus in on beyond you. Like, I do think there's a level of personal accountability and capability that's necessary, and get there as quickly as you can so that you can become a great coach and a great leader and not have it be all about you. Because what we can do together, I've heard that expression, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, as an African proverb, which I love. Hopefully that's true. I did try to look it up one day and it was sort of anonymous, but whatever. And
Hey, Shannon, if you say with enough conviction, it must be.
there you go.
So
Done. Done. And I'm someone who likes to go fast. So I was kind of like, how do I really feel about it? But here's to your point, the asymmetrical growth. It turns out you can do both. With the right composition of people on your team, you can go far and you can go fast. And that is like way more fun.
way more fun.
I want to say one more thing about you, because to my mind, this term gets a little bit beat up, but you are this. You're a heart centered leader. You're someone who gets people at a level, and I've chatted with you about this because you have all of these very strategic, influencing Clifton strengths. And then you have this deep, deep, deep heart motivation, which is magical. And then you have a whole bunch of other cool capabilities and strengths too. And it just combines in this umami, the flavor. And it's interesting because you bring enormous heart to an incredible brain. And that is not all that common. Just saying. So anyway, I have learned from you about one because you make that investment and you make it willingly and you are willing. Well, let me put it nicely. There's some people who you originally invested in who are no longer on the team,
Yes, it's true.
but you're willing to do that. It didn't have to be perfect. It didn't like you were willing to learn and iterate, and then you kept doing it up until now you have 5, 6 companies. Like it's kind of amazing, but you kept leaning into that, and then obviously you're reaping the rewards, which I love every second of. But it's because you locked in, and I think it's a great expression of who you are, Ben. But I want to stress that I've been impressed by how you've embraced this.
Well, Shannon, thank you. That is super kind, and coming from you, that means a lot. I remember I had heard you speak, and you were talking about teams, and I remember going, and so many of us have like these moments, right? When you're 10 years old, you're thinking, you know what? I can't wait. I can imagine what it'd be like when I get my driver's license, and then you get it, and then you're there, and you go, wow, okay, this is what it is. And I remember the vision and the narrative that you spun about the impact of teams. And I remember at that time, there was like, I talked to other entrepreneur, be like, are you listening to this? And they'd be like, sure, yeah. What's the deal? And I'm like, and I remember thinking, well, if I want to be in a free zone right now, what I know is a free zone, a competition free space. I remember going, this is it, because not a lot of people want to do it. Not a lot of people are willing to do it. But I have to tell you, it is 10 times better than what I felt like you underpromised and it over delivered. So thank you.
Well, and you were like I remember you would go to, why aren't you doing this? Like you were adamant with the other people in your group. And they were like, yeah, they didn't really get it. Now maybe they don't have the same people, they don't have the same heart center that you do, whatever. But I've learned to play with the players. I can't worry about the people who don't get it, don't see it, whatever. That's their journey. I'm not a right fit for everybody. Uh, but like with someone who does get it, oh my gosh, we can have so much fun and make so much impact and get the results, which is really great.
I think the thing that it should be compelling to offer to anyone who's listening to us, every single entrepreneur, every person, every leader I've had a conversation with who comes to me bothered. And bothered is a level of emotion that in terms of most people don't want to be, is that I start asking them questions, and inevitably it always boils down to teamwork and the lack of clarity, the lack of structure, the lack of like trained exercises to like build trust, curiosity, and love. Inevitably, it always comes back down to that, like hard stop. And so if you're listening to this right now, my guess is if within 3 to 5 questions, we could make massive improvement just by looking at your team. And who doesn't want to live in a world of not being bothered? Pretty compelling.
Very compelling. And it's interesting. I think you're completely right. I mean, I've heard the expression more than once. Business would be great if they didn't have to deal with any people. And they're talking about their team and their clients, which is really funny. Um, but when you do figure it out, when you do actually go, oh, it's not that hard, it's not that complicated, and people get to bring their whole selves to work. I mean, I remember Tony Hsieh's book, Delivering Happiness, had a big impact on me. And yeah, great book. And he created his first company, and one day he went to the doors and he goes, I don't want to go in. He created a company he didn't want to work at anymore. And then got involved with Zappos, became the CEO, and he created a company. It's interesting. I actually went to visit it twice. They really did have Monkey Row, by the way. It was very interesting / bizarre. And, they just created this space that was fun. It was playful. It was acknowledging. People got to create wow moments for their clients. And I think it's interesting. 40, 50, 60 years ago, Ben, the option to be open, to have trust and curiosity and love in the workplace wasn't really a reality. It was all economics. And if you could feed your family, you were grateful for your job, right? We now live in a very different world, networked economy. And this is, I think, a good thing that people coming to work, if they're going to invest, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, they want to do it because it's something they care about that makes a difference, and in a way that works for them in terms of how they problem solve, and something that is intelligent and interesting. That is the new standard. Business has to up its game. You can't just say, put in 5 or 10 years and then I'll look at promoting you. Yeah, that's not going to work. Right. So I actually think the timing is kind of perfect to expand the perspective and bring in the heart. I'm a big fan of intelligence, as I said, but bring in the will, bring in the heart. Well, first of all, you smoke your competition if anyone is interested in that, but other people aren't doing it, are going to miss the boat, and they're going to lose really good people. And then the great people will be attracted to you and stay with you, because who's going to leave a place where they get to do what they love, meaningful work in a way that works for them? That's everyone's dream job.
Well, it's interesting. You talk about network economy, network leadership, but you know what those are all funded by is ideas. And I think it's worth saying that as we move into this AI world, where if you are hiring for people to do tasks, well, number one, you're setting up the people on your team to fail, because tasks are things that, like AI, or at least a human being with AI is going to outsource. And also, it's about the discernment. It's about the speed too. And what do you do with those ideas? And I think that is, I think teamwork, as obviously you can tell, I'm not only all in, but when I look at this next revolution, I think that if you don't have network leadership funded by ideas, supported by next level asymmetric teamwork, my guess and bet is that you're going to get left behind. And because here's the thing, as we get more technological, the consumer, which is great, they're going to use all these new technologies like we're using right now. But I think that they're going to want to anchor back to the thing that AI can't provide. And that's a relationship.
Yes, circling back to what we were talking about before, and that becomes more precious. And Dan's done, like, his book, "You Are Not a Computer." It's like, computers are brilliant information processors. The large language models do it with language, which is phenomenal. I love every second of it. But what they can't do is be in relationship with you, and they can't love you, and they can't ask you questions about your future, and they can't answer questions about their future either. So there's all sorts of things. And so when we realize that, let's have computers do the information processing, which they are brilliant at, humans it's like broken telephone. You do not end up with the same thing that you started with. But what we are is, to your point, idea generators. We're people who can have relationships. We can bring in the heart. We can bring in the head. We can bring in the gut and the will. And that is, if we use technology to make us more human, we are using it the right way. And with Abundance 360, I thought I liked AI before. I love it now. It's really fascinating to see what it can do. And I can imagine companies where you've got networked leadership with asymmetrical teamwork using AI. You could build 100x company with tiny little group of people. It's going to be kind of spectacular. And what's really fun, and Dan talks about technology as automated teamwork. When you think of it that way, a whole bunch of new possibilities open up.
And I was just telling our leadership team this, that when I look ahead at hiring, I am specifically looking at the quality of the human being and the heart of that they bring, because it's no longer about knowledge. At the end of the day, if you have curiosity, trust, and love, all those qualities, and obviously some level of intelligence, but you bring heart, man, I got to tell you, it's really unlimited.
So I want to talk about that for a second, because I think, let's talk about standards. Because I think, if I think about an organization that only pays attention to feelings and doesn't include the brain or the will, no thanks. Right. So let's talk about with whom you want to work. from a team standpoint and having success criteria, having standards. Like I and by the way, I do actually think I've got this insights from this conversation. Curiosity is now a necessity for hiring. I don't want to hire anyone that isn't curious. And I probably shouldn't say this, but anyway, I was working with someone recently who wasn't curious, and I'm like, why are you in my meeting? Like, go away. Right. It's annoying because I want people who are going to go find new AI, find new tech, find new cool things that can help us do things faster, easier, cheaper with a bigger impact. And if someone's not curious, they're not going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, think about prompts. I mean, let's talk about AI, right? I mean, you could take something that you could ask AI, what are the most non-obvious things? But if you have something that's so disparate over here and you go, well, what happens if I ask this question? I mean, they're finding new elements because a human being knew to ask, a curious human being knew to ask a question.
Yes. Curiosity might actually be one of the new number one success criteria for hiring.
Hey, amen to that.
So you've had years of building companies and you've hired and fired lots and lots of people. What are some of the common elements? Curiosity, I'm going to presume is one of them. But what else? I mean, I think that heart we talked about, capacity for love and to bring that to work. Talk to me about intelligence. Talk to me about some of those other more, not the softer things, the harder things. Does that make sense? What do you look for? What's important to you?
That's a really good question. This is where I wish I could bring, again, harken back to team. I have like the world's best leadership team that would probably have so much more to fill in this. I think the thing that what immediately pops to my head is that they are willing to give as much as that they've received. And so often when I see a wrong fit teammate is they're the ones that are the first ones clocking out. At the end of the day, I don't clock out when it comes to like what I want for them. I mean, it is really known across our companies that I want to create so much wealth that they could retire, but they choose not to, right? Because that creates this circular loop to the point that it's like, well, that puts a big onus on me to make a place of work that they would find more fascinating than not doing the work.
Ben, that is incredible.
Oh, well, thank you.
No, but just think about it. First of all, you are for people's financial well-being and you have some expertise in that. And just imagine the credibility, even someone who doesn't normally talk to clients, when everyone in your company has financial well-being and confidence and success and security, just what that does to the confidence level of people. And obviously what they say to clients, they'll be like, well, this works in case you were wondering, because I've done it. And then the fact that people choose to be there, not because they have to, which is the normal work contract. You will put this many hours in and I will pay you this much, right? Because you need to survive and eat and feed your family. You're disrupting that contract. And now the success criteria for someone staying with you is because they find the work, intriguing from both the head part and also from here. And again, they can be their full selves at work, but it's not because they financially need to. That is a higher bar. That's amazing.
Well, what's crazy is that it was not really crazy, but the offset is that they also want then Jen and I to be successful. It's weird when you invest in other people and actually want their success first. And by the way, I mean, we have programs like for them that we invest that normally would cost, $3,600 to $12,000 that they get for free. Like the pathways that we have made millions of dollars for our clients, they have access to for free. And so it's not just lip service. So I think in terms of being if you want to call it a go-giver, I think this idea, our number one core value is be a hero for others. And I think that there's something that it sounds really good. It's like, could have good lip service, but I think that there is a quest in all of us and a desire to be bigger, have something bigger than yourselves. And I think that's just like an incredible elixir that makes people and creates an environment where people you want to show up and be better than you were the day before. I mean, by the way, I will say that first and foremost, it makes me want to show up better and more available because I'm inspired. It creates an inspiring life cycle.
Well, just think about it, Ben. You've taken out the fear, you've taken out the scarcity. People are living in abundance. And I think the old concern that people have had is like, oh, people won't do things unless they're afraid. Again, I think that's an old contract. And I think what will people do when they have a sense of abundance? We are still figuring that out. It is really new that we've had, for most people, not everyone, unfortunately, that enough to eat. Right? It's really, our nervous systems don't quite know what to do, which is why we overeat, because we're just, our nervous systems are, over the generations, are accustomed to scarcity. Thank you very much. But we're not accustomed to it yet. And so we're still in that, in my framework, in this adaptation phase. But I have to say, very few people have done it from a company standpoint. So I'm kind of mind blown right now. Like, when you want the physical, the financial, the spiritual, relationship well-being of your teammates, and then they come, again, it probably changes day by day, and they come to work, and then it's like, okay, how much fun can we have? This is the sandbox. This is the, your playmates.